Hey everybody, my name is Benjamin Lamb and this is my MBA 615 Leadership Challenge video. The interview I did was with Morgan James of MUSC Florence. I found the interview to be incredibly insightful for me. She gives a lot of great tips and tricks on how to approach this leadership challenge that she was faced with, and hopefully it's something that you all can apply in your lives as well. Start with like what your position is and where you work and what your job entails.
My name is Morgan James, and I am the Director of Ambulatory Operations for Medical University of South Carolina. And my job is a little bit of catch-all of everything because it is operations. So um, anything that makes the physician practice run effectively is my job, basically. From check-in to check out, making sure the physicians are taken care of, making sure we have correct supplies, helping watch the budget, making sure the physicians' contracts are being handled effectively. So a little bit of everything.
So how did you get to this point? Like what education did you have? What kind of like seminars or what other previous job experiences, any kind of that got you prepared for this role?
I started in more of a private practice model. I did work in more of an aesthetics weight loss center. So those pieces were much easier. And then I decided, well, let me move into a for profit world. So I joined a for profit system, worked for them for about 3 years. Nothing wrong with the for profit systems, but I just decided it really wasn't what I wanted to do. Um, then I went to an FQHC for a period of time. My work there was a little different because I kind of managed their grants, is kind of a way to think about it. I managed some of their grant stuff and made sure what we wrote our grant for, that we were meeting the needs to continue getting that money. So I worked with physician practices in a different way because we needed to get patients in the door. And one of the big programs that was rolling out when I did that was what they called the HOP program, the Healthy Outreach. And it was basically to help on reducing readmissions. And so we did a lot of outreach in the community with people who didn't want to have primary care doctors. They would just show up to the ER, which of course is a very high bill. And then the patients aren't managing chronic conditions. So then they have a readmission. So that was part of the work I did there, which was interesting because it was a different aspect that I had not done. And then McLeod Health recruited me. I worked for them for 7 years. I started there as a director of practice operations, moved into the associate vice president role for surgical services, and then most recently moved to Medical University of South Carolina. I did my master's in healthcare administration through MUSC. So I've done a lot of different management. So all of that stuff combined is probably what helped me get to where I am now.
With all of that, all the different areas that you've been so far, as a leader and as an administrator, you've obviously been faced with a difficult challenge or something that
Yeah.
or something that you had to work with. So can you kind of describe one of the more challenging situations that you were in? Like who was involved, what was the situation, what led up to that situation in the first place?
Yeah. So I, instead of using maybe a negative challenge, I'm going to use one that was probably a little bit broader. I worked with the system where we acquired two other systems. And obviously, the majority of the time when you're acquiring a system or a practice or any type entity, it's because they need your help. Um, so I guess some decision making and maybe not as big of a system backing you, that there were some decisions that had to be made and they decided to onboard with the facility I was working with. Um, and I think that is a huge undertaking because you're trying to merge two cultures. And so that was extremely difficult.
When you were approached with it, when you first saw it, what were some of the things that went through your head as far as addressing how to streamline this new acquisition into your practice?
Right. So I think my thought was, you think you're in your mind, you're going in there to save the day for them.
Hmm.
You know, we're gonna purchase you, we're acquiring you, you're gonna be part of our system. And I think in their minds, they haven't done anything wrong.
Hmm. Yeah.
Things just haven't worked as smooth for them. So my first thought was, the very first day I was like, this is great. This is exciting. They're going to be so excited that I'm here.
Hmm.
They're not excited, but they're not nearly as excited as you think they're going to be, because they've put their blood, sweat, and tears into their culture, their system, what they've done. And it's unfortunate that in their minds, to a degree, they feel like they're going to join your culture, and you're kind of stripping them of their autonomy, their uniqueness. And so I really had to wrap my head around, yeah, this is a great opportunity for them, but they're not going to see it the same way I'm seeing it. So I really had to sit back and listen, because to be totally honest, I learned some things from them, and I thought, wow, we could really use that process for us.
Hmm.
So I think you had to sit back and really listen what they thought was going well. Use some of their what's going well, lessons learned, pieces like that, to merge them into your culture, because it's not that everything they were doing is wrong.
Hmm.
It just helps sometimes. And you're part of a bigger system, you can gain efficiencies, have better purchasing, lots of different things like that. It's not that they've necessarily done wrong.
Hmm.
And I think that was the piece that I had to share with them, is that I'm here just to help.
Hmm.
We're going to become a team together. I'm not here to change all of your processes. Yes, some things will have to change, but I'm also here to learn from you.
Hmm.
And I think by approaching it that way, don't come in like a bull in a china shop. Come in, listen to what they have done, different pieces, and go from there, helps.
With your decision, what were kind of the outcomes? Would you say they were positive?
I would. I would say with the first acquisition that I was a part of, there were employees that decided they didn't want to on board, because you do have to get to that point. I hate using this, but where you kind of draw a line and say, okay, this is where we have to go. And if they're just truly heels, dug in, not going to go with you there, not going to be a team player, there do have to be some give and takes. But I don't feel like in the second acquisition that we lost anyone. Everybody onboarded, everybody was excited. Um, and that system did some really great things. So I think that it turned out well. I mean, I'm sure there were pieces that did not fit what everybody wanted, but I think overall we had a really good acquisition, and included and added a phenomenal team.
Obviously, it impacted the people that you were acquiring, but I mean, as far as like overall who it impacted, did it have a like was it a different area that y'all were taking care of with the new
It
acquisition?
was, I think one big impact was we were coming in to help a community, that maybe they were concerned that maybe they weren't going to have health care. Maybe they weren't going to have somebody close by, or maybe they were just going to be forgotten and not be able to be part of a bigger system. And so I think that was a big piece of it too, is helping that community understand that we wanted them to be a part of us as well.
Mhm. So looking back at it now, what are some of the things that you've learned through that entire process, and how have you kind of applied them to what you do now if you ever get challenged with that in the future?
Right. I think more than anything, and this is in everything I feel like you do in this career, communication is key. There are times where you don't want to over communicate because you don't want to confuse anyone. But when people are in that kind of situation, in the absence of information, we do make up our own story of what's going on. So I think more than anything is the level of communication that you need to have and that you need to share with people to give them a certain level of comfort. Certainly don't let a community member or a staff member just people get bits and pieces and not share all of the information, because it starts, you have to do extra work to almost overcompensate for them not having the communication and kind of making up this story that they have.
I- One of the things that we've done as far in this class for leadership was how feedback is really important. So, can you kind of talk about how that is something that you do now? If you have any kind of system with that working at MUSC, do you have any kind of, I don't know, feedback sessions, I guess is what you want to call it, or meetings or anything like that?
Yeah, of course, most systems have like annual evaluations where, your leader provides feedback to you, your leader gets feedback. Um, I really like to use, as a leader, there is a 360 evaluation tool where
Mhm.
you get feedback from your team. Um, I do think it's important to always call your managers your team. You're on the team with them. Um, don't think of them as just like your employees. And you have to be able to truly self-reflect. Um, if you're going to do that tool, you have to make sure that you are at a place as a leader that you're confident enough to take that feedback.
Mhm. Yeah.
um I think we all need feedback, but you do as a leader have to be ready for that, because you can't, I think there's a lot of times leaders, they ask for feedback, but they're not in a position where they really want that
Mhm.
feedback. And then maybe you make a decision because you're upset with that person, or you're irritated because you didn't really particularly like their feedback. You have to get in a position where you don't take stuff
Mhm.
personally. You take it as a, ooh, wow, I can learn from that,
Mhm.
and then go from there.